Alright, so we've created our theme and we've gone over the structure of the theme a little bit, and now it's time to build up our first layout, the default layout. We don't have anything there currently. If we open up our theme and we go to Resources, Views, Layouts, if we look at our default theme or our default layout, we don't have anything there. So first, let's kind of build out a basic HTML layout and include the content that's being generated from the CMS. So start with HTML and let's add the head, and let's see, let's just do a static title for now, and let's see, need the body, and we'll include the content using the content block. And blocks in Twig are a way of designating, well, blocks of chunks of a view. A block is just like a section of HTML that can be extended by views. They can be, well, here, I'll show you in a second here. So content from the CMS is brought in by the content block, and this is just a Twig block. The way you do it is block content, and then if you want to have any kind of default content there, it's rare that no content is going to be passed back to this, but if you were to define some default content, you could do it like this. Oops. And end block. So we've got just a very simple structure here, and we should see the page content injected here. There we go. So not much going on. We have a static title. Let's go ahead and make that dynamic. There are a set of just assumed variables that are included in the template super variable, 3 of which are meta title, meta description, and meta keywords. Those are a very safe bet to always be available. It's up to you in your own modules if you want to implement those, but generally speaking, they're always available in core add-ons. So let's go ahead and translate the template.meta title, and you can implement any kind of titling that you want here. This is just kind of the standard way of doing it. So if we reload, we see the welcome page. Excellent. And let's log in and change that just so you can see what's going on. And maybe we'll put an image there. Actually, let's just do, we'll make this, I don't know, just something ridiculous. Okay. So we've got the title that's included. You'll notice that while that wasn't in our content, it is in our page type, and the page type has to do with the way that the page type defines the way that the content of the page, all the custom fields, are put together to create the content for that particular type of page, and then that content is sent to the theme layout. And it does that by extending the layout. If we open up the Pages module just so that you can see kind of how this works. Let's open up a view. So all of the content basically gets pushed into this for a page, and then we extend the page theme layout. So in this case, we're extending default because that's the default layout. But this is the overall behind the scenes of what's going on there, and I'll show you a little bit more how this works later. So let's just remove some of this stuff in here. So we've got our block, we've got our title, we're bringing in content from the CMS, and just to reinforce how this works, let's create a random view in our theme. Call it hello, And we'll do something like this. We'll get the display name of the user. And what we want to do is render this within the layout that we already have. So let's do something like just so that we know we're in the layout, since we don't have any styling or anything like that going on. This will show us that we are in fact in this layout. So if we were to load up just a random web.php, a random route, let's do test, and we will do our anomaly.theme.demo. And then since we're using the view system, it's going to already go to resources/views. I just want the hello view. Let's check this out. If we look at this, all we're going to have is the actual view itself. We're not including the layout. And in order to get content into the layout from any random view, anywhere you want, we'll be using just normal Twig, extending the layout with the view, and then defining our content block. So what we'll want to do in that hello view is first thing is extend our theme layout, and we can just reference that like we normally would any other view. Demo, and then it's layouts default, and then we're going to define the first. Let's show you, this is an example of when default content would come into play. So if we reload this, we see the default content because we're not defining this content block elsewhere. So let's go ahead and define that. And it's basically the same as defining it in the first place. We're just passing along our new value here. And there we have it. So we're in the layout, we're using our theme, and we're putting this content into the layout that we extend. And this can go on and on. What I'm showing you here is just normal Twig. There's nothing special here that Pyro does. The only kind of standard we have set in place is that the layout assumes that you're passing along content, a content block. And this is only because that's what I chose as the name for content from pages and posts and anything else. If you were to, say, be generating your own content using some other mechanism other than pages or posts or what have you, you can still use content, or you can use a whole bunch of blocks. Blocks can be used for anything. For example, if we had, maybe we have a banner up here that we want to display, and by default there's no banner. And in our theme or our layout, our page or what have you, if we wanted to include a banner, if we reload this just real quick, you'll notice that there's no banner, nothing's different. But if we wanted to include a banner, we can define that too. Just like that, and it injects it, and that's because we're actually defining that portion of the theme. So that's how you can work with blocks and start passing additional content from the inside out, so to speak. I use this a lot for banners. For example, if I want to put up a different kind of banner from a certain page or a blog post or whatever, you can do it here. Or if there's just so many things that you can do with it, but that's how it works. And this is, again, is just normal Twig, nothing fancy here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. We don't need this for now. We'll just work with the content that's being passed in from the page for now. That's fine. We'll remove the banner, and I don't need that. So let's just go back to our home page. Okay, and now it's time to start styling some things. So typically because this is one layout and you'll probably have many of these, anything that's going to be the same amongst all of the layouts that has content in it, you wouldn't do this with the block, but you would do this maybe with the head information. What you'll want to do is just include a partial. We're going to take this out of the layout and set it aside into a partial, and the partial can be placed anywhere. I usually put it in the theme, of course, and then in a views/partials folder. So let's do that. This is typically what I call it. So let's go over here and create our directory. Partials, new file, and let's put this in there. So now we don't have to copy and paste all of our metadata from different layouts. We can just change our one partial and it's included in all of the other stuff. So if we reload, we're still good to go. And now we can really close this for now and start working in here. So the first thing I want to do is include some styling. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you a simple example using, let's use SAS. It's one of my favorites, or SCSS. So I'm going to create a directory, and I'm going to call it styles. You can call this whatever you want. I'm going to create a new file in there called theme.scss. And I'm going to style the h1 tag. I have no idea. Let's do red. This is just going to be hideous, but I'm just trying to fly through this stuff to show you guys a little bit more in my length of time here. So the h1 is going to be red, and what I want to do is use the asset class. There's plenty of documentation on this, but the gist of it is we're going to create collections of assets, and we're going to take the output of that collection and include it as like a style or JavaScript or whatever. So what I want to do, there's usually there are a couple collections that are always assumed, and that is styles.css and scripts.css, and those are used internally in case a field type or something like that needs to include stuff in your theme, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but for now let's just create our own for the sake of theming. What I'm going to do is asset add, and let's just add that one file for now. We're going to put it into a, let's call it site.css, and the name of the collection dictates what the output is going to be. So if we were working with JavaScript files, or we're going to want to bring coffee files into something and concatenate them and output a JavaScript file, we would call it like site.js or script.js or whatever. We're creating styles here, so we're going to call it whatever you want .css, and we're just going to add that file, anomaly.theme.demo, and this references the resources directory. So let's do styles themes, or theme.css. Okay, so now we've loaded this asset into this collection, and we can do as many as we want. We can load up all sorts of things in there, and all we want to do now is render it. So I'm going to do asset style, and this will just go straight to a style tag, and I'm just going to take that collection name, and that's good to go. We could easily do path or URL or inline and wrap it in our own style tag. For now, this is fine. I don't need much different than this, and we'll reload. Okay, so now our H1s are red. So that's the most basic example. Let's add some JavaScript now. I'm just going to add it in a JS file. And this one's just going to send out an alert. Okay, and so what I'm going to do here, you can use globular patterns here too. So I'm going to add this one to a different collection, and I'm going to call it stuff.js, because we're going to be outputting a JS file, and it's basically going to take everything in our collection and pile it into one if we were to add more than one. This one's in the JS, what is it, example. In this one, I'm just going to use the glob pattern and put everything in the JavaScript directory into this particular collection. And then I'm going to do something similar to output it. We'll use the asset script, and this is all documented in the Streams plugin documentation. And we're going to stuff.js. When we reload, we'll get that alert. And so an example of how that glob works is, let's copy this. And we'll have two. So that's how it'll bring those together, and we can minify them, and we can parse them for variables. We can do all sorts of stuff. And if we wanted to, you'll notice that we're using SCSS here, and we are referencing it as CSS for output. It's going to automatically bring in SCSS less or whatever else that you're using that we've got a compiler for, and bringing it all together as a single site.css file and including that. So it's pretty cool. As an example, what you might want to do to include styles from field types or what have you that might be including other styles from outside of your theme. For instance, if you use the date picker field type on a form on the front end, it's going to want to load up, it's going to want to make sure that you have jQuery, it's going to want to load up its initial stylings, and it's going to want to load up the date picker plugin. So in order to make sure that stuff like that gets included, what you can do is do for style in asset styles. So this is almost identical to what we're doing above, except it's returning plural, which means it's going to return all of them in there. And there's styles.css. This is just a simple twig loop. We're going to output that tag and escape it. And we can do the exact same thing for JavaScript. So we'll call this one script, output the same thing, and scripts. So now, and you can put these in your footer too, I'm just putting them here for demonstration. So now, any assets that are required by dependencies that are being loaded for whatever you're doing, be they field types or other add-ons or whatever, if they need to make sure that something's included in your theme for this particular load, then this is how you would render those in. If there's nothing, nothing will be included, and what's needed will be looped over and included here. So this is the basic idea of how you can load things into collections, output them, and you can work with multiple collections, and this is how you can ensure that assets that other things depend on can also make it into your theme should they need to. So this is always a good thing to always have around. Another one is constants, and what this will do is include some JavaScript constants. We'll include some JavaScript constants that you can use in your code. So there's some good stuff in there if you need to use it. That's how you would include those. And you can see here how it outputs the collections that we've used. So we've got stuff.js, which has got those in there. They've been combined. And then we have our site.css. Same thing. And if we wanted to, for example, let's do another theme here just to show you how you can add multiples to the same collection. Let's call this one test.less. And in here, let's see, we will include some other arbitrary style. I'm not going to use less syntax here because it doesn't really matter. Just know that you can use different syntaxes if you need to. You can mix and match depending on, maybe you have a plugin that's in SCSS but you're writing in less, or vice versa. You can use both of those without having to worry about converting from one to the other. So let's see what we're going to do. Background And let's just do smoke. And if we reload, there we go. And you'll see the background has been applied. So that is a kind of introduction to how collections work. There's a lot that you can do with this. Obviously, you can keep, you can start bringing in like Bootstrap, which I'll show you next in the next video, and you can start bringing in like plugins and working with things like that. But this is the general idea of how to take an asset and put it into a collection with perhaps some others, and then include that in your layouts. So pretty easy stuff. Play around with it, and if you have any questions, leave your comments below, and I'll see you next time.